President Joe Biden is standing alongside unionized auto workers who are walking the picket line. They're on strike against Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. Today marks the 12th day since the UAW went on strike, asking for as much as a 40% hike in wages and full-time pay for 32 hours of work. That's right, 5 days of pay, 4 days of work. Joe Biden attempting to woo a union that has yet to even give him its endorsement as Donald Trump set to visit the Motor City tomorrow. This as Ford pauses work on a $3.5 billion showpiece EV battery plant in Michigan, citing concerns about the company's ability to operate competitively to make a profit. Republicans have criticized the plan since its proposal, claiming that it would facilitate a flow of U.S. tax subsidies to China. In fact, $1.7 billion set aside from Michigan taxpayers to do exactly that. Plus, the CCP is involved, making the automaker dependent on Chinese technology. Join me live now to discuss all of this, research fellow at the Heritage Foundation and the Federal Budget Center there, E.J. and Tony. E.J., thank you for being here.
Steve, thank you for having me.
A lot going on. Joe Biden travels to Michigan. Donald Trump will be traveling to Michigan tomorrow, both working for votes there. But we've seen this migration of working class, blue collar workers from the Democrats to Donald Trump and the Republicans ever since about 2015, and more dramatically in recent years. There's a reason Joe Biden's there, and that's because the Democrats are in trouble with working class Americans. What do you say?
Well, I think they're getting in trouble with just about everybody. Unless you are essentially in the Democrat donor class, you have done very, very poorly under Joe Biden. There are certainly exceptions, but for the most part, those who are in the lower and middle income stratas have less real money or real earnings today than they did when he took office. In other words, yes, everyone's paycheck has gone up, but your larger paycheck can actually buy a lot less. For the typical American family, for example, you're looking at about an extra $230 each week in terms of annual earnings, but those larger paychecks by about $100 less. So you can extrapolate that out to not just the average American family, but especially lower income families as well. And you see that people are genuinely hurting today. They are truly worse off than they were 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, the buying power has been eroded in large part because of reckless spending. Joe Biden and the Democrats will tell you about all of the great things associated with Bidenomics, but the truth of the matter is, trillions of dollars spent in the name of COVID. By the way, hundreds of billions of those dollars yet to be spent. They could be redirected to important places, but they won't be. They'll be gobbled up, and that pushed inflation, so we printed money, and here we are with a dollar that's worth significantly less than it was just 32 months ago. I mean, the buying power of a middle-class family today, EJ, has been it's been undercut by these policies, has it not?
Oh, 100%, Steve. And you're right. Bidenomics is probably best defined as higher levels of government spending, borrowing, and creation of money. And there is your perfect recipe for inflation. And as a consequence of that, people, again, have become genuinely poor. And the reason for that, and this is something we often overlook, is that inflation is fundamentally a tax. It's just a hidden tax because Congress didn't vote on it and the president didn't sign it, but the fact remains that it is a transfer of wealth away from the people and to the government. And as a result of that, we have seen net household wealth grow tremendously under Biden, but that's just in nominal terms. In real terms, it hasn't budged since he took office. In other words, all of the net household wealth that has been generated by tens of millions of more people working has entirely been transferred to the government in the form of this hidden tax.
EJ, let me ask you about this, because the approach from this White House, whether it's Karine Jean-Pierre or Pete Buttigieg or anybody else that they put out in front of the cameras on a regular basis, is that just wait for it. You don't understand. Bidenomics is working great. The infrastructure package is great. The Inflation Reduction Act is great. And you just don't appreciate all the good things that we've done. And to me, that is so condescending to the American taxpayer, to the person that goes to the grocery store and goes, my God, I can't buy much for $100 at the grocery store to feed my family, who goes to the gas pump and finds that gas isn't $2.25 a gallon like it was when Donald Trump left. It's almost $4 a gallon, higher in 10 states where it's above $4 now. It's just insulting and demeaning to people to say, oh, you just don't understand. And they just keep going back to that over and over again, EJ.
Steve, that's true, and it would be one thing if this was still very early on in the Biden administration, but we have had 2.5 years now of these policies. It's much like how in the current NFL season we just wrapped up the third weekend of games, and there are a lot of commentators talking about certain teams and saying this team is better than its record or worse than its record. In other words, it's too early to tell. We don't have enough actual numbers and raw data in to really definitively say who is a good team or who is a bad team in some of these cases. That might have been the case in the initial half year or even year of the Biden administration. At this point, we have plenty of data to make a full and accurate assessment. And that assessment, unfortunately for the American people, is failure.
And here's what I'm seeing, and I'd like you to weigh in on this as well, because it seems that the mainstream media finally unable to ignore the facts. And the facts include the Washington Post ABC News poll showing Joe Biden's overall approval at 37%, but his approval at the southern border, 23%. His approval with the economy, 30%. These are all-time record lows, not just for Joe Biden, but in the history of the ABC News Washington Post poll. These are all-time new lows, and I don't think they found the bottom yet. You cannot point to a single area of American policy, here or abroad, where you say, well, at least Joe Biden's doing a good job on, and there's nothing there, is there?
Steve, it's a great question. I think one of the reasons why the poll numbers have even lower to go, and take this with a grain of salt because I'm a monetary scientist, not a political scientist, but I think the polls have even lower to go because we haven't seen a lot of these catastrophes happen at once. In other words, we had the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, but it was not at the exact same time that inflation went over 9%, for example. And while inflation overall has come down, real wages remain negative, and home prices, we just got more data out this morning, are at a new record high. And so once you start having more of these disasters happen concurrently, I think that will just encourage more people to pile on, and the president's poll numbers are going to go even further down.
Yeah, I agree with you, E.G. I think the Democrats are in a difficult spot, maybe an impossible spot. Do you dump Joe Biden, make him a lame duck president? Do you make him leave, put Kamala Harris in there, who remarkably is less popular than he is, and let the Democrats fight it out for who becomes the candidate in 2024? And all of those Democrats, whether it's Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer, they've all been riding with Biden anyway. They're all in bed with him anyway. So I don't see that there's an upside for Democrats right now or for the American people. EJ, really appreciate you being here today.
Steve, thank you for having me.
Thank you, truly. All right, after the break, the Biden administration is placing a new czar in charge of monitoring the efforts of some schools to remove sexually explicit books from their library shelves. Bridget Ziegler will be joining me to look deeper into this coming up on ABL.